Welcome to a new educational video. In this segment, I'm going to teach you how to outsmart insurance agents, but also funeral homes. I don't want you to be taken advantage of, and I want you to have the basic information for you to make a wise decision. So I'm titling this video, How to Outsmart Insurance Agents and Funeral Homes. And this is deciding between final expense insurance, so small insurance, and an actual pre-planned funeral. What's best? And you're going to find out today. The goal is the same. You want your family or yourself to be protected in case you lose a loved one or they lose you, and you want them to have something so that they won't have financial chaos among other problems when the time comes. So both scenarios give you a benefit. So if you have already one of those two, you already have something great. Okay. If it's an actual funeral arrangement, or if you have a small insurance to cover final expenses. So just different plans, but they both help in a situation when you lose a loved one. So you're going to see the pros and cons now of each one. Option number one, if you do an actual funeral arrangement, planning ahead, they usually give you anywhere from 1 year, 3, 5, and up to 10 years small insurance. And during that time, you finish paying that arrangement, but you're insured in the meantime. Some of the benefits are that you get a price lock, meaning whatever the price is at the moment you sign up, they have to respect that. Even if you don't need the services for many years or decades to come, the prices have to be frozen at that time, even if you don't pay for it right away and it takes you 10 years to pay for it. Your personal wishes are documented if you want a specific type of disposition, such as cremation, scattering cremated remains at a particular place. If you want to be buried traditionally and where, you can specify all those details. And there's a regulatory oversight by the state. They regulate that, they heavily regulate that, and you're going to learn more about it in a moment. And then one call solution, because you already have an arrangement, the family doesn't have to go in the worst time when they're tired and they're suffering the loss of you or the loss of another loved one, sitting in front of a salesperson with the tag of funeral director, trying to sell them all kinds of packages and making them believe that they need all that stuff, right? So one call solution. The portability, that means that you can transfer those plans to another location. Most of the time, you are able to do that, not just to another funeral home, but to other states. And then the balance, if you had any balance, let's say you're paying into it for 5 years, you still have 50% to go, then something happens to you, they forgive your balance. What are the cons? You're tied up to a particular service. If you passed away, they have to respect that. Maybe that's what you want, so it's not necessarily a con. And then you have limited flexibility. Sometimes you are unable to switch from what you already chosen. Let's say after 3 years, then something happens and the family wanted to switch from a traditional burial to a simple cremation. They can't change that. So you're locked in. They have to respect your personal wishes. And here's option two. Option two is the final expense insurance. This is an actual funeral arrangement. What you're looking at is just like a check. You're literally just getting a check. The family usually gets it a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, depending on the company. After they receive the death certificate, they look at it, they review, and then they issue a check. So some can issue a check in a couple of weeks. Some of them can take a month. And there are some other ones, unfortunately, take a lot longer. But it's just a check, right? So some of the good things about that is you can get insurance anywhere from $2,500. Typically it's $5,000, but anywhere from $2,500. And there's some that offer up to $50,000. A lot of this is regulated by the state. So even if you wanted to get more than $30,000, some states don't allow you to. So again, because there's tax benefits in it. So what are the pros? The flexibility. You get the cash and the family can choose any funeral home they want. And if they have some medical bills, they can use some of the money for that, for the surviving spouse, for instance. And you get, again, higher coverage than you get for the funeral arrangement. A funeral arrangement, let's say you get about $10,000, $12,000, because that's all you need. And then you're locking in the prices. With this, you can get 3 times, 5 times higher protection. And then portability, obviously, because you can use anybody you want. So what are the cons with a final expense insurance? So there's no price lock, meaning that as time goes on, maybe you had a $15,000 insurance, but by the time you need the services, now it's $20,000 or $18,000 because the cost of inflation. So that's a negative on that. And then there's no documentation of your personal wishes. So then there can be family um, disagreements about trying to figure out what is it that you wanted. They can have different versions of what they heard from you. And then the claiming process, again, it takes a little longer when you have a final expense. Some of them are, again, they're very good. And if the family, even if the family uses credit cards to pay for the arrangement, then they know in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, they're going to get the money for the final expense. So it's not too bad either. This is an actual chart that shows sort of the traditional service, meaning the traditional funeral service and the cost. You can look at 1980s. It was probably around $1,200 back in the 1980s. So you're looking at 46 years ago as we're making this video in 2026. And then as time goes on, prices keep going up. But something happened after 2020 that they just started charging a lot more. And the cost of inflation keeps going up. So if you look at 2025, 2026, right now the average is $12,000, $14,000 for a funeral service. Of course, there's always a cheaper one, it's always a more expensive one. But the prediction is that by 2035, you're going to be looking at around $23,000, $24,000 for a funeral service. So now you can see why it's important to choose the right way. So I want you to take a look at this chart. For example, this is Texas, but like California is pretty similar, and many other states. So just an example. So you're looking at the chart, and you see the sort of the purple line, I guess, arrow, and you can see somebody who just planned and paid about $12,000 for a funeral arrangement. They just signed up to it, even if it takes them like 10 years to pay for it, but they already locked it in. So it's locked in, plus the cost for insuring that balance. But once they finish paying in 3 years, let's say 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, I usually don't recommend 10. Some people don't have any other option, but it's always better to do 3 or 5 if you have the possibility. So then you lock in the price. So what happens with the difference? So what happens if by the time you need the services is double or triple the cost? Then the program has to cover the difference, not you. So if you had a final expense insurance, it'll come out of there, right? So let's say you have a $25,000 insurance, and by the time you need the services, now that's what it costs. So then everything is going to go in there. But if you had a funeral arrangement that by the time you got it, it was $12,000. So then if by the time you need the services 25, the difference is paid, is covered by the program. So some of the benefits, and you can see it right here in this piece of chart in the top, it says the price freezing, balance forgiveness, personal wishes recorded, portability, inflation costs covered, funds protected. Yeah, the state heavily regulates that. They're kind of kept like escrow, so they oversee that, meaning the funeral home can't touch your funds. They're protected. And it's until the person passes away that the funds are sent to the funeral home. And then one phone call takes care of everything, and there is no financial abuse of the family trying to purchase something in the worst days of their lives and then ending up paying a lot more for emotional spending and being sold on things that they didn't really want. So here you can see three, for example, three of the main benefits, right? So you look at a pre-planned funeral, you have price lock, your wishes are documented, and then the services are already pre-planned. And then you have the cash benefit on the final expense insurance. It's cash that you can use for multiple reasons, multiple purposes, and you have a beneficiary who's going to receive the money and can take care of that. And again, the flexibility of using whoever you want to use as a vendor to cover the final expenses, final arrangements. There are scenarios where you can have a hybrid, meaning both, obviously both of the scenarios. So how do you do that? And this is quite common when you're educated in the subject. The strategy is to combine the pre-planned funeral to lock in the prices, obviously, and your personal wishes, but also have some extra money to cover other expenses to protect the surviving spouse. So men, unfortunately, statistically speaking, we get to live 5 to 10 years less than women. So this is great to protect our wives in case something happens to us. so they can have a little extra money. So this is a good way to do it. So the potential uses for the extra cash, obviously for cemetery expenses, because cemetery, you cannot insure the cemetery. You can have the funds to pay for the cemetery plot, but it's treated as a piece of property. It's different. You always do different contracts for the cemetery property, if that's what you want, right? And then travel. Sometimes the family needs to travel to attend the service for mom, dad, or other family members, so they could be a little extra cash for traveling. And then again, any medical bills that are pending for the surviving spouse, you can use some of the money for that. Repatriation, that's actually very common. We live in a country where we have immigrants from different countries, different parts of the world. And let's say they want to be taken back to the Philippines, to Mexico, Central, South America, any country where you're from. So those funds, those extra funds can be used to pay for the repatriation of the remains. And so the result is that the family has not just a secured service, but they also have cash. That means you have to have two different things. It's not all in one. You have the funeral arrangement and you have this extra policy for the cash that you or your family might need. So another brief here. So if you want just the prices to be locked in and you want your personal wishes to be recorded, all you need is just a funeral, an actual funeral arrangement. And then if you just want the family to have cash and then they can do whatever they want and make the decisions themselves, so then just the final expense is more than enough, or you just want the money to be extra, not even necessarily to cover funeral expenses, final arrangements, but just to cover final expenses that could be other than the actual funeral, right? Like cleaning up the place, again, paying some outstanding bills, having a little extra money to help the surviving parent to move somewhere else. So you can have that cash for other things. And again, you choose a hybrid if you want, both scenarios. You want the funeral expenses to be locked in and covered, personal wishes are documented, and you want the cash, the extra cash to cover additional unexpected expenses. So quick real life scenarios. So you have scenario A, and that's a family wants an exact service detail. They don't want to have to deal with that. They don't want disagreements among family members. They just want to make a phone call. No stress, no financial stress, no decisions, no decision disagreements. Scenario B is for someone who wants a family member, loved one, to make the decisions, choose the vendors, and choose the final decisions because they don't want to do it. Scenario C, again, the family wants the final arrangements, protection, the prices to be locked in, but they also want the extra cash. So what's next? Now that you know all that and you kind of have an idea of what you want, just remember there's no one size fits all answer. And the reason for that is because there's variables. If you're getting social assistance, that makes a difference. We have to use the strategies there. If you're planning on moving somewhere else, that's also an issue. So we have to work through what you want and try to find you the best scenarios. Also, your health and your age make a big difference. So usually this takes about 20 minutes to review your particular situation, answer your questions, and try to help you get what you want based on your possibilities. So there's information. If you need to just send us a message, call us, text us, and then we can help you. And remember that a thoughtful plan today reduces the stress tomorrow. And this is bonus information. So a myth that a planning eliminates all the stress. No, you're always going to have obviously the pain, the grief when you lose a loved one or when the family loses you. And another question that is brought up a lot is if the prices are really locked in. Yes, they are. This is something that the state regulates. I mean, it's a long explanation on that, but yes, the state regulates the prices. So the current prices from a funeral home, a participating funeral home, becomes part of the contract, and they have to honor those prices. And even the funeral home has to sign up that they agree on what's in your contract, even if they don't receive any money until the time of need, many years or even decades after. So can I change my plan later? Yes, you can. There's rules for that, depending on the state, depending on the type of plan you got, but there's always ways to do it. And in some cases, there are penalties. In some other cases, there are not. And then another question, what if I move to another state? Yes, the plans move with you. And the reason for that is because, again, the money is on an escrow type of account, which is sheltered under an insurance feature, an insurance company, but the funds can be relocated to another provider, another funeral home. So here's some terminology real quick. So pre-planned funeral, pre-need, that means that you're planning ahead. Most of the time you cannot do this if unfortunately you're already on a terminal stage where unfortunately you're expected to pass away in the next few days, weeks, or just a few months. That becomes very difficult. So pre-planning is what it is. So you're planning a funeral arrangement for the future. Final expense insurance is just a check to cover final expenses, no specific type of final expenses. A beneficiary is the person who receives the money from the policy, from your insurance policy. The premium is what you paid on a monthly basis, and the trust or escrow is where the money is held, usually on an insurance vehicle. Even if you already paid for the whole thing, like in a funeral arrangement, they're still treated like escrow inside of an insurance company. And then regulated means that the state oversees the whole operation to make sure you, the consumer, are not taken advantage of, and whatever contract was there is respected. So the difference between a sales agent trying to sell you a particular type of insurance or a particular type of funeral arrangement because she works for a funeral home, and a counselor is that the counselor doesn't represent one particular thing. They always look for what's best for you, for your family, to fit your scenario. So just remember that, and this is for educational purposes because it's different for every family member depending on your personal situation, and it also changes from state to state. So at any time, feel free to reach out for an advice, and remember, do not take advices from people that are not licensed, they're not experienced in the subject.